Hey, what's up, lightboltjoe here. Today we are going to discuss Book 2 in the Heroes of Olympus book series by Rick Riordan, the son of Neptune. We have our main man, Percy Jackson himself, carrying the golden eagle of Rome that was lost from the 12th Legion in Alaska on a glacier as the Alaskan fort is being destroyed and all the little, shadows are pummeling down. This is a great graphic. So this is over 500 pages long, came out in 2011. The first book of the Heroes of Olympus series is called The Lost Hero. That was about Jason. This one is the son of Neptune, so it's about Percy. So we start out 8 months. Percy has been asleep and memory loss for 8 months, right? So he disappears like in October, and the Battle of Manhattan it ended in August, right around his birthday, something like that. So he had some time with his friends and girlfriend Annabeth at Camp Half-Blood. So then Jason and Percy both disappear, right? Jason from Camp Jupiter in the Berkeley Hills area near San Francisco, California, and Percy of a Manhattan, Long Island descent disappears from Camp Half-Blood. Now, Jason and his quest with Piper and Leo happened around the winter solstice. Now, this new quest of Roman stuff that's going on involving Percy, Hazel Levesque, and Frank Zhang, their quest is happening around the summer solstice. Again, it's always the summer solstice. It's hysterical, June. But it's not so much the solstice itself. It's about the Feast of Fortuna, which is the 24th of June, something like that. So Percy he's been sent from the wolf goddess Lupa in Northern California to travel south to find a camp, south of where he was being trained. And he still has invincible skin. He bathed in the river Styx under Nico D'Angelo's request and suggestion, got Sally's permission to do so, Sally, his mom, to do so. And therefore he had the gift of Achilles, curse of Achilles, I don't know, I forget what they call it, but he has impenetrable skin except for the small of his back. That's the one weakness. Achilles had his heel, Percy has the small of his back. So as Percy is traveling to the camp, he's being attacked by these Gorgons, but they can't kill him. They can't break his skin, and in return, he can't kill them, because every time they turn to dust, they just reform. So something's up with Death. Death is missing. And why is Gaia, the Mother Earth goddess that she is, Gaea, Gaia, why is she on a quest to destroy the gods? Why is she trying to raise these giants? In the Percy Jackson and the Olympians books, we had the Titans as the, main villains. Now, in these books, we have the giants as the main villains, along with Mother Earth. So, Percy is fighting the Gorgons. He's eventually crossing, to get to an entrance he sees of this particular camp, which is a tunnel guarded by Frank and Hazel. That's how the three of them meet. But in the process, he sees this, crazy, hippie, homeless lady who's named June, and she convinces him to give her a piggyback ride, cross a highway, travel through the tunnel, cross a river, and get to New Rome, Camp Jupiter that it is. Percy just does it, but she explains to him that once he crosses this river, the Little Tiber, he will lose the gift of Achilles. The bathing of the river Styx, he will no longer have impenetrable skin, so it's more of a sacrifice. But he knew he had to do this. So he briefly meets Frank and Hazel. All four of them get to camp. June reveals herself to be Juno, who is Hera. Juno is the Roman form of Hera. And then Juno is explaining to everybody at this camp, everybody at Little Rome, that, listen, he's important. He's part of my plan in regards to Percy. He has no memories, and there's a point to having no memories, but he is going to, do great things, whatever. And then in the process of this, Mars then visits later that night. Mars is the Roman form of Ares, and he claims Frank Zhang as his son. So to have Juno and Mars show up on the same day talking about both Percy Jackson, shit hits the fan. So there's creator Reina Alvarez. We love Reina. She is a wonderful demigod that she is. She's the daughter of Bellona, and her sister Hyla is the queen of the Amazons. We meet them in Seattle. And then as the story progresses, we've learned that we've actually met them before, when Percy, Annabeth, and Grover were at Circe's spa and resort in the Sea of Monsters, the second book of the Percy Jackson series. And then because Percy and company destroyed their home, they then had to find their own home. So Reyna became creator of Camp Jupiter, and Hyla became queen of the Amazons in Seattle. So it's thanks to Percy that they have these roles, coincidentally. But there is no coincidence, as Percy explains, because he's faced magics, and he's faced prophecies, he's faced gods and goddesses and monsters alike. There's no such thing as coincidence. It all happens for some reason of fate. So the quest then is Frank, Hazel, and Percy, after we learn that Hazel is an escaped spirit from the fields of Asphodel in the underworld. And Nico D'Angelo is here, but Nico's pretending he doesn't know Percy, which we don't understand why in this book, but we learn later on why he's pretending. So Hazel is a daughter of Pluto, and we get her backstory. She died in 1941 while her mother was being possessed by Gaia, and they went from New Orleans to Anchorage, Alaska, and then she has this curse of Pluto where she can just bring different, riches and jewels and gold and metal and stuff from the earth. So they're creating they're helping reborn one of the giants as for Gaia, but then Hazel sacrifices herself so her mom doesn't have to suffer anymore, and they both die, and they're in the underworld for 70 years. But Nico is looking around for Bianca, his sister, who passed away in book 3, The Titan's Curse of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, and he finds her and realizes that she shouldn't be here, so he takes her out. And the reason why he can take her out of the underworld is because Thanatos, the god of death, who is not Hades, the god of the dead. There's a difference between Hades ruling the underworld and then Thanatos, who is the god of death. So he's in charge of making sure everybody stays dead, or making sure that the escaped souls go back to the underworld, things of that nature, right? So because Thanatos has been kidnapped, basically, he has been chained up in Alaska by the same giant that Hazel happened to create many, many decades ago. They have to release death. They have to release death to make sure that monsters can stay dead, because there's no end to the killing then if monsters can't die. If they can turn to dust but then reform right away, there's no way of actually killing them. But the doors of death have been opened. Gaia has opened the doors of death, and Thanatos can't patrol if he's chained up, so therefore monsters and creatures alike can escape the underworld. No problem at all. And that's the quest. The three of them have to travel to Alaska to, free Thanatos. So we go to Portland, we visit the seer Phineas, who is a descendant of Neptune at some point, so Percy's brother, technically. We get prophecies from him, but then we save Ella the Harpy in return. We go to someplace else. We go to Seattle, where we are facing against the Amazons, who are running Amazon, the company, in Seattle, which is a hysterical play, but it's great. This was from 10 years ago. It still holds true. Hyla sees that Percy has, Reyna's ring as a peace offering, kind of, so they're like, oh, okay, well, we can work together, but you have to free Thanatos so I can actually do my job, kind of a thing, because she's trying to face off of this escaped dead queen Astera, who Gaia, let come back. Scandal galore, right? Then the kids go to, 13? Hazel's 13, Frank is 16, Percy's 16, something like that in this story. They travel where? They go to Vancouver, because Frank's family is from Vancouver. He is Chinese-Canadian, but then we get his whole backstory that his original ancestor, Persiclenius, I can never say the name, was a demigod from Poseidon, right, Greek-wise, and then he was an Argonaut, but then he was Roman as well. But then his ancestors were Roman, and then Roman legion were captured somewhere in the Middle East by the Chinese, and then they eventually went to China, and then they kind of settled in China. So there's a place in China called Lijin, Lee, Lee-J-I-N, Jien, Legion, I think, which is really legion, right? So it's interesting how within world conquering of different civilizations from different, conquering empires, they settle and they take roots, right? So like Rome had a lot of influence in India as well, but Rome had a lot of influence in China, specifically because of these captured soldiers. It's very interesting. History is very interesting. I give it that. Tragic, but interesting. So Frank's ancestors are from both Greek and Roman, right? Settling in China, but then moved to Canada in an import-export kind of ordeal. His mom, um, Jennifer, she was serving in the Canadian Armed Forces. She died in Afghanistan, but she herself had a son with Mars, who is Frank. So Frank has numerous amounts of Greek and Roman blood in him already. Amazing. And he can shapeshift and turn into different creatures. Great. So with the three of their different powers coming together, saving Ella, having Tyson the Cyclops and Mrs. O'Leary, who are tracking them down to begin with, bring them back to Camp Jupiter, the kids that eventually get to Anchorage, and then they eventually get to the glacier that the big giant is on, who Hazel had brought back, was reforming many decades ago. Frank had his life force is attached to a stick, that if the stick burns out, then Frank burns out. And we know this because Hera had shown Frank's mom and grandmother that his life force is attached to this stick when he was a baby, so he always had to make sure the stick was safe. And he eventually trusted Hazel enough, so he gave her the stick, literally giving her his life to protect and save. So Frank uses his life force to melt the chains of death so Athanatos can escape. They save the golden eagle that was lost from the 12th Legion of the 5th cohort within Camp Jupiter itself. So they're bringing all this Imperial gold. They're bringing the golden eagle back. And they have then the help of the Amazons when everybody gets together and fights. And then Percy teams up with Terminus, who's the god of borders, perimeters, or whatever, in New Rome, so that way they can defeat Polybotes, who's a giant who's specifically created by Gaia to be the opposition of Neptune, something like that, or Poseidon. I think it was Neptune, but it's the same in regards to Percy has to fight this. But you can only defeat a giant by teaming up with a god and a demigod, unless they're beyond the gods. So Canada is way past the gods. So that's why they could defeat that one giant. So there's 2 giants defeated in this book. Pretty awesome. Iris is a big part of this as well. She was pretty neat, thrown into the mix. And then Percy's made creator at the end. He's wearing his purple cloak. He's got his, little badge. He's all set, right? So we know from Gaia that Nico has been captured, and that they have to now find Nico in the process of going to Rome. Once everybody on the Argo 2, Leo, Annabeth, Piper, and Jason all come from Camp Half-Blood to settle down, to explain the plan, to make sure nobody kills each other, so that way they can team up, so that way the Greeks and the Romans, the Grecos and the Romans, the Grecians and the Romans can finally work together to go back to the motherland, to go back to Rome, to then go back to Greece, to make sure that the giants are defeated on the home turf, so that way everything is fine and copacetic and good with the world, right? Okay. And this concludes our summary of The Son of Neptune. This is a super quick book because it's spoken in the 3 different perspectives. Same concept as The Lost Hero. You got Jason's, you got Piper's, and you got Leo's perspectives. And this book you have Hazel's, you got Frank's, and you got Percy's perspectives. Great, because it goes super, super quick. You got some chapters that are 3 pages long. You got some chapters that are 13 pages long. It just makes sense to keep up with the different perspective and have the different characters interact differently. It's great. It's simple. Another cool thing about it is that we see that Hazel's freaking out with an image of Leo because Leo looks exactly like Sammy Valdez, who she used to date and have a crush on back in the, 30s and 40s when she lived in New Orleans before her mom forced her to move to Alaska. So, is Leo the descendant of Sammy Valdez? Obviously, we know this because we've read the books and we're talking about them again. But it's pretty cool having it all come together. That's the benefit of Rick. He never misses a detail when it comes to this kind of inter-character development mashup. crossover event, glorious Camp Half-Blood versus Camp Jupiter, is not a versus. It's a combined little ampersand sign, that little end sign. Genius. I'm so happy that this shirt finally came in because I forgot to get it prior to starting the Heroes of Olympus, reread and review. But I'm glad I have it now. So, Heroes of Olympus, The Son of Neptune, 2011 book by Rick Riordan, second book in the series. Awesome. More to come. Mucho mahalo.